Hey everyone, this is Matt D on the Turnbuckle Bandwagon. My guest today, special guest, I'm excited to have because I got stuff to ask and talk about. You may know her as Razor from Women of Wrestling. She's also appeared on the Women's Wrestling Weekly show on the AfterBuzz TV network, host of the Women Wrestling Friends podcast, and the founder of Nerdy But Flirty. You know her as Razor, but Sarah the Rebel is her professional name, right, Sarah?
Yes, it is. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited. Before we get into like Women of Wrestling and all that stuff, we were briefly talking about you being involved in tabletop gaming and how just that space isn't super duper open to some folks out there, and how it can be more open, and what you're doing to help with that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's something that I guess some folks just kind of look at it. Oh, you've never played D&D, and they kind of look down on you. But I had to point out to some of my friends. I said, this is not something that like Black people really do. And then from there pointing out that there's not really a lot of representation of Black people in the fantasy worlds. I mean, I remember in Conan the Destroyer, I didn't even like that movie because it wasn't as good as Conan the Barbarian, but it had Grace Jones. So I loved that movie because how often did I get to see a Black woman in a sword and sorcery movie? It wasn't that common. So anyway, one of the things that I did back in LA is I had two DMs I worked with, and they're both super awesome, and we would get together and do D&D games for other people who had never played before, and we'd end up with these really diverse RPG groups, mostly women, people who we weren't invited to go sit at the table and pretend to be wizards when we were little kids. So we're doing it now as 30-year-olds.
That's awesome. And I'm sure the games are a lot more fun and a lot more interesting with what people who've never played, different perspectives and all that.
Definitely. And you get things that like you wouldn't have thought to do. So my best friend, Tamara, who is my co-host on Women Wrestling Friends podcast, she played, I think it was maybe her third time ever playing, and she had only done one-shots before that. When she played with us, we played the Dragon Age RPG, and she was like a freaking savant. She was figuring out ways around the rules I'd never even considered, and the DM would just look at her, and it'd be like, yeah, yep, you can do that.
Yeah, I've just been replaying Dragon Age Inquisition and waiting for part 4 to come out whenever that happens.
I'm on my 4th playthrough.
An Inquisition. Do you change up classes? Because I've played through twice just as a mage. It's just I prefer mage because I like all the spells and the buffs and the barriers. I was thinking of starting a playthrough as a rogue just to see how that goes.
So this is my first rogue playthrough. I prefer to be a warrior, but when I do my replays, I do force myself to change the class and usually the character as well. So this is my first time playing a human and my first time playing a rogue.
Oh, okay.
And it's not as bad as I thought it would be. There's ways in each of the classes, they kind of give you a way to play similar to other classes.
Yeah. I just prefer the mage. I like the long range stuff, and I like cast and stuff. Okay, because we're going to spend an hour talking about this. Not that I mind, but I want to get into wrestling. A point I've made to ask about my guests is training. If you briefly want to just, were you trained, who you trained with, and what things in your training worked or did not work for you?
Sure. So I started my training at Santino Bros. Basically, one day I was I worked in the video game industry. One day I was at E3 at a party, and I ran into Xavier Woods. And we got to talking, because of course we're both nerds, but we got to talking about wrestling. And I had watched off and on after hitting puberty. I watched wrestling when I was a little girl, and then the puppies era started, and I just like I couldn't take it. As like, imagine like you're hitting puberty and all you hear is that these women who are supposed to be warriors are just sex objects. But and that's all they'll ever be, and they don't get full matches. And I just got so frustrated I stopped watching. But anytime it was on, in college dorms or whatever, I'd watch it. So he and I got to talking, and he mentioned school, and I said, whoa. You just go to school for it? And he was like, yeah. So I Googled a school that night. I found Santino Bros. I didn't sign up yet because it was like, I'm trying to remember, maybe $3,000, something like that, $2,000.
Crazy.
Xavier Woods gave me and my co-host Tamara tickets to go see Raw. When we got out of that show, there was a flyer for Santino Bros on the car, and I was like, that's a sign. So I took it, signed up, started training there. I got injured twice, and so I quit to work on building up my back strength, because as we have just been discussing, I'm a nerd. I've spent almost 30 years sitting hunched over a screen,
Uh,
at
right,
work doing
right
it
there
and
with
then
you.
going home and playing games.
Yep.
So my back, as a result, is the muscle in my back is just ruined from sitting my whole life. And so I went and I got into Pilates and strength training to strengthen my back. And then I came back to training, and then I also trained at WOW Women of Wrestling's dojo, and then I trained at the New Japan LA dojo.
I did a little bit of research, and based on what I read, you were one of the only women to come in and out of the New Japan LA dojo.
Yeah, I was the first and only girl in my class, and then later on they had, I think, a few other women go through. But for me, this was the first class they did back in LA.
Okay.
It was 30 people. I was the only girl. I was actually just a manager at that time. I wasn't even a wrestler.
Okay.
And they made no exceptions for me. I had to lift the same weights the guys lifted. I had to do the same circuit the guys did. It was the hardest 5 days of my life, for sure. But two things very important to me came out of it. One was that I found out at the end of it that the other guys had used me for motivation.
All right.
Because
Yes.
they would look, they'd be doing their 100 squat jumps and they'd be wanting to quit, and they'd look and they'd see this tiny 5-foot girl still going, and they were like,
Can't
I
stop.
can't
Can't stop.
be
Can't.
with the girl.
Yeah.
So
Never gonna
yay,
hear the end of it. Got to keep going. Got to keep going. Who ran that? Who ran that seminar? Who ran that class?
It was Shibata, Rocky Romero, Kushida, Scorpio Sky,
Yeah.
Nima Shimoda, who was my biggest champion there. She kept saying strong heart, because she actually only spoke Spanish and Japanese.
Really?
This was the best part. We had Mysterioso, who spoke Spanish and English. We had Mima Shimoda, who spoke Japanese and Spanish. And then we had Shibata, who spoke Japanese. So
Okay.
Shibata would say something, Mima would translate it to Spanish, and then Mysterioso would translate it to English.
Yeah, Shibata. Anyone who's familiar with his work, he's not going to cut you any slack, no matter who you are. If you walk in that dojo, better come ready, because
She cut me a tiny bit of slack once.
oh,
We were doing
was there like a little smile or something?
we were doing an exercise where you leap over a kendo stick into a roll.
Oh, okay.
And he held the stick up for me, and I just looked, and I guess he saw the look of my face, and he just lowered it slightly. I was like, "Thank you, Shibata."
Just so subtle. Like that seems
Yeah.
very Shibata. Very Shibata. Just lower a little bit. All right. So to get into Women of Wrestling, I came across it really by accident. I was stationed out in San Diego, and it was syndicated. And this is the original run, I think, from like 2000, 2001-ish time. How did you kind of come into it, come across it, become a fan?
A friend at wrestling training at Santino's took me to a show, and I was just blown away by both the cheesiness of it, because they had a rapper lady at the beginning, just like the old Glow.
Okay.
I can't remember her name, Riza, something like that. And she was like rapping the beginning, and I was like, where am I? And then, just getting to watch an all women's show was very exciting to me. And so anyway, fast forward, and I was in Japan, and my friend sent me a job application. She said, "This sounds perfect for you." And I'm a writer in my other life. And it was an application to write for a women's wrestling show. So I reached out. I'm like, "I'm perfect for this job. You need to hire me." And they never got back to me.
Okay.
And then something in me just said, reach out one more time when I got back to the US. I reached out again, and they were like, "Oh, I'm so glad you reached back out. We forgot about you." And I started working as a writer for WoW. And so that's how I first got to actually know WoW.
Okay. And this was like when there was kind of the relaunch and they were just doing like their online only content, like before Access, kind of in that,
Yes, it was
those reboot.
right. Yeah, it was right before Access.
Okay. Yeah. Cause I kind of semi friends with Stephen Dickey. And he's a good dude. And he's told us some stories about getting things together. Kind of what was that like, kind of just being in that environment and working with not only wrestlers, but also actors who are coming in too? What kind of like collaborative environment does that foster when it's not just only wrestlers in there?
I wouldn't call it collaborative.
Oh, okay, I didn't know. I'm just asking a question.
Yeah, it's more it's very difficult, because you have to understand, and it wasn't that difficult for me, because I came into wrestling late.
Okay.
But for women who got into wrestling because they're so passionate about it and they've loved it their whole life, it is a disrespect to see these women who it's not their whole lives kind of come in.
Yeah, they just
And
answered a casting call.
yes. And so it actually does lead to a bit of friction, not even on purpose. Most of these women, wrestlers and non-wrestlers, most of us are very good people, right? We're not trying to be haters to each other. But you'll see somebody do something that would be considered really disrespectful in like a normal wrestling school.
Yeah.
And then you have to remember, this is not their life. This is not their, how bad do you want? That's what we ask her. How bad do you want it? You have to suffer because you want it this bad. Okay, this lady will leave and she will go back and make her money doing stunt work. She doesn't need this.
Right.
And so it's very interesting to have. I think I kind of almost wish everyone had to do it, because it makes you realize how you're taking things way too seriously. In this industry, we take things that we shouldn't too seriously, and we take things that we should take seriously not seriously enough, and call it part of the business and part of the legacy of wrestling. So I think it is useful, but I would use a nice word like collaborative.
I
It's
wasn't sure. I was trying to like maybe soften it up. I didn't know. I had a very similar discussion with a wrestler last night, Big Bacon, Brad Hosty, who's a wrestler here in New England, and he's very similar view. Like there are things people talk about like protecting the business and this and that, but they're the type of guys who do like some really dumb stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like when John Oliver's expose came out, the fact that there wasn't immediately a push for unions and for the wrestlers at WWE at the very least to be considered employees tells me all I need to know about us. We are drinking the Kool-Aid. Wrestlers have been convinced by people a little bit smarter than us that this is the way it is for good reasons. And instead of fighting to, I got to work with a Vegas show out here called Atomic Saloon Show.
Okay. Is that I that sounds familiar to me. I don't know why. What I have heard. I think
it's a pretty great show.
Okay. I you know what it is? Because I follow you and I follow Barbie Hayden, I believe Maverick. So maybe I think it was her that I saw it come across my timeline.
Yeah, we're both in the show. So seeing how the acrobats and the performers there, they have their rights. They have their unions. This is a time-honored tradition. The clowns, right? Very similar to wrestling if you take the clown aspect. This is something that started in the carny world, and they legitimized it and made it, no, you cannot abuse me. No, you cannot take advantage of me. You must pay me this rate. You must not make me work in unsafe conditions. But I look at what they've done and I'm like, this could be wrestling if we didn't drink this bullshit Kool-Aid all the time that told us that we have to be this way because it's how you find the strong. Why?
Yeah, I am 1,000% in agreement. There's this, and I feel like it's slowly changing as the older heads kind of slide out and the new folks come in and start seeing, like, again, you talked about the clowns, the performers there. There's legitimately no reason that I can think of, just as a fan, I've been a wrestling fan for almost, 20, almost 30 years, that there isn't even a union or some sort of collective, let's all look out for each other. Rising tide lifts all boats. If it works for one, it's going to work. It's pretty much going to work for all. And we're all going to have a better working environment. It's going to be safer. It's going to be more collaborative in the good way, not the weird way. And it'll be better it'll be better now, and especially down the road for people coming in, because getting people interesting, especially Black people, brown people, it's there's a barrier there that a lot of people don't realize. And if you put in a union collective effort, you're going to bring those barriers down. We're going to get more different representative talent in, and wrestling is going to get better.
Right, absolutely. Right now we're crabs in a barrel, and everyone's told you have to fight for your spot or you'll lose it, and that's why this mentality exists. And to your point, they don't even notice the things that they're doing to hold Black people back. I mean, even I've mentioned before in other shows, I would watch the way Black students were spoken to versus every other race of students. I'd watch what work was considered acceptable or good by them compared to other students. And at one point, I was dating a wrestler who'd been wrestling for 17 years, and I said, hey, this girl that y'all keep not booking for anything is not bad. She is the same skill level as everyone else. And he's like, well, I heard this, I heard that. I said, can you please just watch her? And finally, he watched her, and he said, you're right, I'm going to tell everybody. And so from then on, she got booked more places. But she had this invisible barrier that she didn't even know existed, because there's two, like in everything else in this world, there's two Americas, there's two wrestlings, unless you have a trainer or a promoter who's of color and so doesn't do this. A lot of people on the West Coast do this. I don't know how it is on the East Coast.
New England's getting better about it. There are more brown folks in the independent scene now than there were just about 10 years ago. And they're getting booked, just up and down the East Coast. Women like Trisha Dora,
Love
who's,
Trish.
yeah, she's amazing. She's staying booked. Faye Jackson, all these different women that are not the conventional mold of what people see as a women's wrestler, are being successful and are, their name is out there, like Vanity, same thing, and it's great to see. And I hope as we move forward into a new normal of wrestling that it continues to grow. And, I get to go to a show that's like 50% women, and half of the women in that chunk are women of color or Black women or whatever.
That's one of the things I love about WoW. The phrase "I don't see color" is often a negative thing, but in the case of WoW, it actually has been a pretty great thing. David McLean, he really doesn't care what you look like. If you have the energy and the heart, he sees it, and you are in the running to be a champion. It doesn't matter if you're big, small, LGBT, Black, white, Asian. Like he would not stand in front of your dream because of that. Unlike plenty of other companies who are like, you don't look like a champion. He doesn't see it that way. He's like, why? And that's one of the things I truly love about WoW. Was that was one of the first times I got to be in a locker room surrounded by a lot of women of color, and also a hefty dose of LGBT folks as well. So I don't know, it's a very cool place to work in that regard.
Yeah, one of my earliest memories of watching WoW was seeing Chained Heat and two women of color just dominating. I forget who they were. I think they were beating up, like, I forget the names. I think it was like Easy Rider and somebody.
No, Easy Rider was the other lady. Hang on, they had crazy names. Why can't I remember them? Oh, that's so embarrassing.
I don't, but I know Chained Heat, and I remember Dealt a Lot of Pain and her partner just hammering people.
Dealt a Lot of Pain, and
yeah, I can't get the second one.
So they're a really funny story because they are one of the most loved tag teams of WoW history, but quite unfortunately for the optics of today, they are a Black woman and a Latino woman in jail clothes.
Yeah, I knew when it was announced that they were going to be on Axis, I was like, is Chained Heat going to make it? Probably not.
But we did offer some options, like, hey, just add a white girl to the mix, and there you go. It's not about race, but we ended up not finding a girl that really fit that.
Really?
And it's very, as far as the characters go, unlike other shows where you come to them with a character, WoW pitches a character to you. But it is collaborative. If you're like, no, that doesn't really fit me, then you get to say that, and then they'll work with you from there. So, but never say never. It's not never that a group like that won't come back, but also those two women are getting kind of old. They don't really feel like wrestling it much anymore. So, it is what it is.
So when I guess it's for the reboot, which was, I think, I want to say 2012, 13 maybe, where it was just online only in those shows. And then I'm one of these big TV nerds. I love like the business of TV. And I remember reading when there was a deal signed with MGM, Jeannie Buss got involved, and then like less than a year later, they announced y'all are going to Access. When that happened, what was the process like of getting shows and stuff together and kind of for making the path to TV re-debut or debut, national TV debut, I guess?
Well, first, there's a lot of excitement because I guess this is what David McLean has been reaching for ever since Glow, his involvement with Glow ended, is he's been reaching back for this moment. And so it was a lot of excitement for the old guard. For all of us new people coming in, we just kind of took it for granted. Like, yeah, of course we're going to be on TV. Look at us. Look at the production value of this of this show. Why wouldn't it be on TV? So there was a lot of excitement about that. As far as putting together a show, it's incredibly stressful. Hurry up and wait. A lot of things that you would find on any TV show or any movie set was happening in wrestling, and a lot of wrestlers aren't really used to that. I was very lucky that I got to kind of cut my teeth on championship wrestling from Hollywood, which is kind of might be familiar to you if you watch NWA right now, because they're using a lot of the same folks who made Championship Wrestling from Hollywood and kind of taking the ideas they got from seeing that how that show was filmed.
Yeah.
In fact, we used to I can never remember his name. The guy who runs NWA, he's in a band.
Oh, Billy Corgan.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't listen to Smashing Pumpkins, so I always forget his name. My bad. He used to come and like watch in Championship Wrestling in Hollywood to give you an idea of like, they do things in a pretty professional manner. So if you had that experience of getting to go on a TV show where you're told you have to make your match this time to this time, you have to find hard cam, you have to sit in makeup or hair. If you've done that before, it wasn't as bad. So for the actor and the stunt double people, this was totally fine. But for plenty of wrestlers, this was like a crazy 2-week period where for the first week you come in, you meet all these new people, you train, you go over your matches, and then the second week and you film vignettes to like 3 a.m. And then the next week you have the 3 days where you film enough matches to cover several television episodes.
Yeah.
They do each season in one taping.
Yeah. Okay. I thought it was like you got broken up over a weekend or two. So that was 1 weekend, huh? That's it.
Well, it's not even a weekend. It's 3 days during the week.
Wow.
And we have like 16 matches a day almost, I'd say.
Jeez. How's the end of that like first day? You're just like, everyone's just like, ugh.
Actually, usually at the end of the first day, they're coming to you saying, hey, we forgot to film this. And then you're up even later filming things.
It was like, for me, as being more of an independent wrestling fan over the past few years, like seeing faces that I knew going into WoW, as like seeing Eye Candy, who I know is Willow Nightingale, who I've watched wrestle for years out here, seeing Diamante, Adrenaline, Kira Hogan, and then seeing kind of inhabit this other world. It was just really cool for me as a fan. There were some things that I felt worked, some didn't, but it was cool to see them.
I really enjoyed getting to see Kira Hogan in WoW because she's kind of treated as not, I don't want to say not as good as she is, but kind of, right? Like,
there's sometimes been that perception of her that,
right.
Yeah. So
she's kind of treated as like maybe mid-tier, lower tier. And on WoW, they looked at her as a star. Yeah. And they were like, you have this baby face fire and you have this baby face skill. And we're going to put you there and we're going to let you show off to everybody. And so her getting to have this is something that's so important to me. WoW has storylines, not you made my boyfriend upset, so I'm going to fight you. Not, oh, I hate you because you stole my man. Not, I'm going for the championship and that's the same goal that all 50 of us have. No, we have like actual storylines. Fire, she wanted to be a wrestler. She had to hide it from her family. Like, that's what I love about it. I'm the leader of a gang of girls. We have Abilene Maverick is the daughter of the governor, and she has this whole other storyline involving like a spilled ice cream. Like,
her boyfriend Preston. For some reason, I don't know why, but that particular storyline just like it entertained me, but I really dug it because it's like it's so over the top, but it so fits in that world. Like they had the whole setup of like, her boyfriend Preston and a drink getting spilled and her and Steffi like having this back and forth. I just really, I was entertained. I was more entertained than I thought I was going to be watching that.
It is. And I think part of that for me is because of the range. We don't just have ice cream spilling stories. We also have the Tessa Blanchard and the Santana Garrett storyline, which was very serious. And we have the Thunder Rosa character storyline with the mysterious stuff that's going on with her lawyer. Like, there's such a range and variation of storylines that I literally cannot watch WWE or AEW without being frustrated because I'm like, what's your story? How come you can't think of stories? And me and this old man sat in a room for 5 minutes and came up with 10 different stories for somebody to fight.
Okay, so with David, is he just this guy that's just like he's a huge women's wrestling fan and he just wants it to be as good as it can be and as big as it can be?
It's his passion. Yeah, he looks at things, wrestling wasn't even the only thing that he felt this way about, but he's done different things. And sometimes what he's pointed out too is like sponsors are not ready for this sort of thing. And that's the saddest thing. We could have so many more good things, but sponsors, it's very hard to explain to them what's going on with wrestling. And to the point where sometimes sponsors will even just say, oh, like, these women are scantily clad, we can't promote this, and we can't explain it. Hey, if there were guys on this show, they would also be scantily clad. We don't wear a lot of clothes when we wrestle. It's like, so it's been a very frustrating time for him to push for years. Can you imagine, for decades?
Yeah.
He has been pushing because he believes that this is a show that people will want, and it's a show that we deserve. And kudos to him for never giving up on that dream and keep pushing and pushing and pushing.
Pushing. Now with the involvement of Genie Bust and Access, and again being a big TV nerd, they announced you guys are going to be on Access. Time goes on, you have 2 seasons in, and there's some really there was a lot of, like, was there any kind of matches or stuff that happened on there that maybe you worked on that you were particularly proud of?
My match with Lioness, I was very proud of, because I had maybe 3 matches by that time, and Lioness had one, and it was the night before.
Yeah.
So the fact that we were able to have a match that told a story as cohesively as it did, to me, I was really, really proud of that. And because I finally got to be the character that I want to be, that I'm never really allowed to be anywhere. Anytime I'm heading towards the ring, I'd get a note from the announcer or the referee, hey, David wants you to cut a promo. The amount of trust for someone to have in you to just say that,
Yeah.
no other show was doing that for me. No other show knew that they could trust me on the mic to that extent, but David knew it. And so he would let me cut promos before and after every single match I had. And I got a lot of great feedback from people just saying, like, you are really good on the mic. And so the second season, I got to do it even more. And that's one of the things I'm most proud of, because that's what I bring to wrestling. I don't necessarily bring any high flying antics or amazing athleticism, but like, I can give you a character that you're either going to love or you're going to hate.
And a lot of people took to you and the Psycho Sisters. Like, when you all came out, there was a really, the reaction was a little singular there. And even like seeing on social media, from what there was, people seem to really like y'all.
Yes, unfortunately, we just look a little too cool. We're supposed to be bad guys and we do bad things, but people want to cheer for us because we got this cool face paint and this cool look. So that was one of the funny things of having Selena Majors is the trainer and the booker, but she's very old school South. And in the South, in her time, somebody who looked like us would be a heel automatically. People, wow, look at those gross punks, But unfortunately, we're filming in LA, where women see us and they're like, oh my God, I want to be that. Like, that's the best thing ever. So despite our actions, just because of the way we looked and the way we worked together as a team, people kind of wanted to like us. So that's been fun. To be like the bad guys that people like is very cool.
I was a fan. You work with, I know is Harlow O'Hara, but she's a solid wrestler. It was just a fun thing. Everything about WoW was fun. And then, changes happen. Axis gets bought out and y'all get bumped I was super mad about that, because when I found out about that, I was actually watching wrestling with some friends of mine, and it kind of came across the timeline. I was like, look at my phone, and I'm like, what I'm like, this is what? And they're asking, like, what's up? And I was like, because they knew I like had covered it for the other website I worked for. That's kind of where we generated the friendship with Steven. And then I was just like, the show I've been covering just got axed because Anthem bought. I was like, I was heated. And even as a fan, it just sucked, because it was just like, yeah, WWE's got their platform, and now AEW's got their platform, and the companies, that promotions that need it, especially something like WoW, which in my opinion deserves a platform, even if it's just an hour, on something, getting that taken away because of business
and politics, really.
And politics, yeah,
absolutely politics. That's the thing that has hurt wrestling for decades and decades, is we want to see these cool things, and politics will always get in the way. Imagine how frustrating it is for me. We filmed my best match in my career in season 3. And that was how long ago? Almost maybe even a year ago now. I'm bad at time, but it was a long time ago. No, almost. We're coming up on a year in a few months. But don't worry, because we are still happening. Nothing has changed other than where we're happening, and a pandemic. The pandemic is what's preventing things. It could be on TV right now if not for the pandemic. I'll put it that way.
All right, so so y'all are gonna have a home somewhere.
Yes.
Awesome. That's seeing like at the end of season 2, like seeing Beast win. you know, tag team champs and all that stuff. It's just, it seems like things was just getting rolling, especially that back half of season. I guess it was, or the, I don't know if it's back half of season 2, but that the part that concluded when we last left WoW, things were rolling, and it seemed like there were cool storylines, and like the whole thing with like Amber O'Neil and Jesse Jones and that whole tag team, which I thought was really cool because I've been a fan of Amber O'Neil for a bit. Things were just getting going, and then you kind of got the rug pulled out from you, be it pandemic and politics and all the other stuff.
Yep, definitely. And yeah, so that's the only thing that's holding things back right now. So don't worry, fans of WoW. And there, as far as the getting rolling aspect of it too, there's that has been planned for as well. So super don't worry.
Yep, there's gonna be from the mind, the creative mind, or one of the creative minds herself. WoW is gonna happen. I'm excited to see it whenever it resumes. Now during this pandemic, and you're a great social media follow, folks. Follow her on Twitter.
Oh,
She's
thank you.
hilarious. You were stuck in some compulsory viewing of Supermarket Sweep. Did you?
Ugh.
It was like the most random of tweets, and I just like, what's happened? Because my mom loved that show, and that was on back in the day.
My boyfriend literally had, who, if anyone is listening doesn't know, it's Ricky Mandel, known as Ricky Mundo from Lucha Underground. Literally had my wrist in his grasp. I put, as I started typing it out, he like let go real quick, like, oh, no, I'm like, he was literally holding me to be like, no, you're going to watch this. And he brought it up like 3 days before, like he just kept bringing it up.
Oh.
And then finally I was like, fine, whatever, we'll watch it. And I was this is so terrible. Why would you do this to somebody?
That is like Lifetime TV, 89, 90, 90. When it ran for a while too, because my mom was a huge fan. I ended up
getting 80s by that hair.
Oh yeah. a lot of Aquanet going on. Yeah. Getting into fun stuff, you know, your tabletop, your gaming, we're both huge nerds. Shout out to Xavier Woods, and not that he needs the pub with his 2 million subscribers, you know.
I got to help him when he first set his Twitch up. I got to kind of pay him back. You know, he helped me kind of get my start into wrestling unknowns to him. And then I kind of helped him when he had questions about Twitch because I had been streaming before that.
All right. Are you still streaming or?
Very rarely. The pandemic and then the Black Lives Matter protests really derailed me. The pandemic I was doing okay with. But then when, you know, the nation starts rising up and every single moment of every day you're hearing some new horrible... It was too hard for me to do anything but play The Sims. Like, I just couldn't.
Just had to get away. Gotcha.
You know, what's there to talk about? I'm miserable.
I started playing My Time at Portia, which is a Xbox game, which lets you like kind of like it's Xbox's version of like weird Animal Crossing crafting hybrid. But like you take projects from the town, you build like baskets and platforms and
bring my stuff.
What you know, you build cool stuff, you upgrade your workshop. I have like a little farm with like some sheep. I just needed something that was okay, because like being here on the East Coast, I'm in Connecticut. We had a number of protests, and Connecticut people think, you know, it's this weird random state which is near New York, but we've got rural areas, and even going to like a farm town and seeing a Black Lives Matter protest and seeing a protest for people to see that it's not something that just happens in these cities. It's accountability is important everywhere. Everywhere.
It's amazing. My aunt is very old now. She's my great aunt, actually. She's in her 80s, I believe. She's from Ireland. And I would have always assumed that she lives kind of in one of those rural areas, you know, not totally rural, more just like kind of on the outskirts of it.
Yeah.
And to hear her stand up for stuff was amazing to me. Because my own mother has been brainwashed living in Virginia with my boyfriend into saying things that make me angry all the time. But to hear my old great aunt being like, no, putting her foot down. And I was just like so proud to know her, you know, to know that she's part of my family. But yeah, it's one of those things where you feel guilty about how much you're even doing. You know, and so to add that to like, I just couldn't stream. I couldn't just play a game and act like I was okay because I wasn't okay. And then I was not okay that I was not okay. You know, and so when other people have it so much worse than me, so then the guilt, you know what I mean? So yeah, it was a very tough time, and it's still like it's still a tough time, but I'm not the kind of person who can let myself wallow too long, because then I feel guilty about wallowing.
It's just this whole just guilt on top of guilt on top of guilt, and it's not good for your mental health.
No, it's not.
I'm not the pro. I've gone to like one or two protests, but I have friends who've been out there in New Haven. You know, it was a peaceful protest and got tear gassed, and you know, I ran down and like bought him some, you know, I trying to help where I can, donate where I can, buy shirts where I can. The shirt I'm wearing was a charitable thing. It's a Soul Foodie on Twitter.
Huh?
You know, I have various T-shirts that are from charitable causes. Um, Help any way you can. You know, Black Lives Matter, Black Trans Lives Matter. Drink water, wear a mask. Try and not be mean to other people.
Yeah,
Try.
yeah, no, and it was really tough out here. I live in Vegas,
Yeah.
and Vegas also has a trafficking issue. And as a single, at the time, a single woman, you know, did I feel I couldn't get my friends to go with me. I had to ask the question, do I feel comfortable going out into this city where even in the best of times I could be kidnapped, and go to something slightly dangerous in the and during a pandemic when I have a very bad immune system.
Okay.
You know, and I had to make there was another layer of guilt. I don't feel comfortable protesting. So I luckily, because of the way things worked out with Patreon that month, I was able to donate 8% of my Patreon proceeds to Black Lives Matter and Trans Lives Matter initiatives, and of course signing petitions every day and
Yeah.
having to be reminded by my friends that that is valid. We did our footwork for Floyd. You know, like we put in a lot of time and energy into that and got burnt out even years later. A lot of my friends from that time were were still pretty burnt out on what we had to do, and that was an interesting point that some of my friends pointed out to me, because I wouldn't have even realized that that was what I was feeling. It's like,
Yeah.
it's happening again, but this time cool things came of it. We
Yeah.
have got a few changes, and that's amazing.
Yeah. I've got statues. They pulled down a Columbus statue about,
Bye.
yeah, bye. Bye. Yeah, they pulled it down in New Haven, which is got this very big Italian American population. The place I grew up in, which is a little north of there, big Italian American population. They have this thing about Columbus, and I'm just even like, you know, even as a kid growing up, I was like, no, I don't get it. Why is that there? And it's gone now. So put
I
something
grew up,
else.
I lived in Richmond, Virginia. We have a whole avenue.
Oh yeah. Oh
In marching elites, once a year we would go. This is like a 90% Black children organization. We would go march down this avenue of Confederate statues once a year for this parade. And I remember it to this day. You know what I mean? And having to ask, who are these people? And the parents and the guardians there being like, they fought for the rebels, you know, trying to like
yeah.
make it not so bad. You know what I mean? Like I was so proud to see Richmond tearing those statues down.
Yeah. The Robert Lee statue. You know, history is history, and people are like, you're erasing your history. I was like, no, read a book. Read
Read
a
a book.
book.
It's all in the books.
Go. You know what? Take that statue. Go put it in your backyard.
It's the history of 1960 when you put it up. Shut up.
No. Oh man, if I don't laugh, I'm gonna cry myself to sleep. Oh man, that's so great. Nerdy stuff happening, and this interview had an outline, but it doesn't now.
Sorry.
No, oh no problem. It's I all my interviews have an outline, and then about 10 minutes in, it just goes. It's Comic-Con at home. I've been watching videos instead of prepping for my interviews. So a lot of really cool stuff's been announced. Is there anything like you've come across that you're excited or have heard of
No,
during?
actually, I've been staying kind of off of it.
Oh, okay.
My other job that I have, my shoot job, has kept me really busy these past few days. So I
Gotcha.
haven't even been able to see, other than the fact that it's happening. But
Yeah.
when I used to go to Comic-Con, panels were actually my least favorite part of it anyway.
Really?
So I didn't plan to watch any of them. I'm a weirdo. I don't know why. I don't like to sit and watch other people talk. I just don't. I just give
Okay.
me the clip notes. What's happening?
What's happening? What years have you? When have you gone?
When I moved to LA was 2011. So let's
Okay.
see, but so from 2012 to 2018, so 6 years, I've attended Comic Con every year. I didn't attend last year because I was in Scotland working on the Atomic Saloon show in Edinburgh.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
but other than that, from the moment I moved to LA, I went to every single Comic Con.
Yeah, I went in 2000. I was when I was stationed out there, and then I went in '07 and '08. Always enjoyed it. I enjoy the panels because I like listening to people tell weird random stories. But you're not your thing.
This was not my thing. Yeah, my ex, we would go all the time, and he would be like, okay, bye. And he would go to the panels, and I would go hang out with friends, go drink, go, hang out in the artist alley. And then the panels would be over, we meet back up. I'd say, okay, tell me the cliff notes. He'd be like, oh, you missed it. There was this amazing conversation. I'm like, cool. What's happening?
I think one of the coolest things was being in a panel and then having Stanley roam in and tell a story about how he convinced Marvel to let him work from home. And this was like the 70s. He went from like working 1 day a week at home to like working 4 days a week at home, and he did that in the course of a year and just slowly convinced them to let him do that.
King, that's how I am. I'm like, let me work from home. Y'all complain I'm distracted at work because I talk 24/7. Put me in my house. I will get all the work done for you. I'm so like, that's like, the pandemic is terrible, but I'm really happy that it's finally proving to people that work from home is a real legitimate thing.
Yeah.
I just have people come at me. I've been a contractor for a few years now, maybe about 4 years.
All right.
And I used to have people come at me like, oh, I just can't be productive at home. I'm like, that's a you problem.
That is a you problem.
I'm way more productive at work. So it's cool to see like companies have been forced to admit that this is a legitimate way to work.
I got one of my friends is she's an HR person, and she's been working from home since about March, and she's like, half the company isn't going to go back to the office.
Yeah.
And like office buildings, like, and here in Connecticut, like office buildings and commercial real estate's a big deal here. It's going to take such a hit because everybody's happy just working from home and being productive from home.
Yeah, it's much better than listening to Karen's conversation over to the left, telling me to take off my headphones every few seconds because she's got a question. So now I'm distracted. Now you're mad at me for being okay. Anyway, I got a lot of feelings about open office.
Oh, I hear you. I did an office job for 12 years. I now work out. I'm going to be working outside as like a delivery driver, like slinging tires. I am not going back to working in an office anytime soon because I don't need to hear your ill-informed opinions about illegal anything, or like your sketchy looking neighbor who's actually just a black guy who just bought his first house. He's not sketchy. He just bought his house. So calm down.
Yep. No, all of that. But back to Comic-Con real quick. 1 year I worked Hall H as a I can't remember what it's called. The person who tells you where to go.
Usher?
Usher, thank you. I'm like
Usher.
And that was the year. So that was pretty cool to see. I hated it on one hand because it's like 16-hour days for 4 days in a row.
Long day.
It's very hard to be on your feet that long. But on the other hand, I got to see every trailer for every movie, right away. Nice. And the coolest thing that happened there was the Star Wars Celebration announcement.
Okay.
And all of us were in full panic, all of us ushers, because we were like, oh God, we're going to get trampled. And I can't remember who, was it Chris Hardwick maybe, who got on the mic and was like, realized what was about to happen and said, everyone stay seated, stay seated. We're going to, and like literally on the mic, the moderator of the panel,
it was like calming people down.
Everyone out row by row, and what should have been our job, that he just like saw that we were not going to be able to do it. And then, so that was already amazing. Then poor Silent Bob, Kevin Smith. He's the panel right after.
Oh.
And basically, he was like, guys, do you even want this panel? We could just go if you'd like. And nobody wanted to go. So he was like, he had to sit there and do his panel. You could tell he was miserable. He just wanted to go to the Star Wars Celebration.
He was like, do I have to? He was like, I signed the card. I got it.
Yeah, he was like, come on, guys. Don't you want to we should just go. And everyone's like,
no, if we all agree, we can all just go. If I get sued, whatever, we'll just all get up and we'll go.
Right? Like, and it's always funny to me that they didn't think, hey, we could just hang out with, like, we'll go in a group with Kevin. Like, wouldn't that be cool? No, they were like, I'm here for my panel.
I'm not that, but I've gotten lucky though. The panels I've been to, like, I've had a chance to meet people I've wanted to meet. Like, like I met Mark Verheiden, who's a producer of Battlestar Galactica. I've met Katie Sackhoff. Big fan. Yeah, she's awesome. The only 3 announcements I cared about so far is The Boys got renewed for season 3 already. Big panel with that, and they're gonna have like a cool after show. Aisha Tyler is gonna be paneling. Charlize Theron did some cool panel about like the old guard. I don't know if you watched that on Netflix yet.
Not yet.
It's awesome. Check it out. It's great.
Okay.
And then apparently G4's coming back.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. It was some rant. It's this tweet that basically it's on the XPlay Twitter handle. They have a Twitter handle that's verified now. It's going through this like warehouse, and when you get to the end of the warehouse, you see a TV that's playing Pong, because when G4 ended, the last sync was it playing Pong, and it just says we never stopped playing, and it says G4 2021. Yeah, right.
Mind blown.
I mean, I don't think we're gonna get like all the OGs back because a lot of those people have moved on to other stuff, but I think having that kind of content in this environment, especially kids who don't know about G4, you know.
Especially these kids who are watching all this garbage on YouTube every day. I'm so worried for the children. I can't lie to you.
Weird for some of them. Like there's some good ones out there, but yeah, it needs. So how have you? So during this, because you're working from home, like what's in like the Netflix Hulu queue, like other than The Sims, like what's keeping you entertained?
I think I just wrapped up a bunch of things actually. So I was watching What We Do in the Shadows. I was watching the Harley Quinn cartoon.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah, so good. I watched The Witcher when it first started. Now what I'm mostly doing is forcing my new boyfriend to watch all of these shows. Come on. Oh, the Avatar: The Last Airbender was what got me.
Back on Netflix where it should have been the whole time.
Yeah, and now they've redone it to be the HD quality. So
oh, really? Okay.
I'll watch it again with my new boyfriend. And the only problem is we don't. I have found I don't consume media the same way a lot of people do. I'll give you a clear example. The Witcher. In the very first episode, this is a slight spoiler, but I think if you haven't watched it by now, you weren't really planning to.
Yeah.
The queen at the table says, she's talking smack to her granddaughter. Granddaughter's like, you fought your first battle when you were my age at Hawksburg. Fast forward not 2 minutes later, then we've got Renfrey saying, well, you know, this lady just fought her first battle in Hawksburg. You know what I mean? Like, there was the very first clue in the beginning of the show that there were two timelines immediately, right? Yeah. No one else I've ever watched television with has gotten that. And it's not just that, it's like everything. Like, I'll watch Umbrella Academy, be like, do you get what's about to happen? And they're like, no. And I'm like, they've been talking about an eyeball this whole time, and this guy just lost an eye. What are you not getting? So it's kind of frustrating for me to introduce people to shows. So like, we're going very slow. I got them to like What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah.
I'm working on Avatar. Working on it.
Avatar.
And
and Korra is going to be hitting Netflix, I want to say, next month.
Who cares?
So what's that?
I don't.
No, not Korra, not at all, not a thing.
Watched every episode as it came out with my friend and just ranted the whole time. I think it's garbage. And I know a lot of people hate that shit to hear that, and they are like, no, you just feel that way. No, I feel that way because it wasn't as well written. You took a world that was very interesting and you deleted it and started over. You did I just don't care about any of the characters. They're all half-baked versions of the original characters. Like, I absolutely hate that show. Sorry.
No problem. Hot takes from Sarah. Love it all day. I'll go back rewatch Avatar just for like the Zuko episodes. You want to do a sequel? Give me 10 episodes of Zuko like tracking down what happened to his mother and like, you know, trying to figure out his path forward. Give me that.
Yeah, no, luckily I feel like the stories they told in the comics were what I would have wanted to see in a sequel. You know, and people are like, Aang had this story, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's not the point. You know, I still could have, I gave Korra a chance despite that, right?
Right.
But like, there were so many fun, interesting stories that we skipped over to get to. Aang was a bad father. Well, why didn't you let me see any of that? Like, you just decided this beloved character, I have to now hate him because you skipped, you know what I mean? Like, I just didn't like the way they handled things. I didn't like the stories they were telling. The fact that I felt like we still had these cool, interesting things to learn. And luckily we got them in the comics. So I'm not going to like hate too hard, but it would have been way cooler to get to see it.
Okay. So just everybody just rewatch Avatar. Just go, you know, rewatch, do a couple episodes a day. But the Harley Quinn cartoon, I didn't think I was going to like it because I've kind of not been a super huge fan of HQ as a character, but sitting down and watching it and like watching a show evolve with women protagonists and understanding so many things that other shows either don't care to talk about or don't care to discuss or don't care to bother with evolution. The only other show I think that has had decent close to character evolution was Angel, seeing like what happened with like Wesley from like, you look at Wesley in the first season and the 5th season, that's evolution, that's advancement as a character. So I really enjoyed it. I think I have to get to the last 2 episodes, but I'd seen part of the other one when I was like half asleep. But
it was the kind of show that like now I'm ruined for other DC cartoons.
Oh, no.
You know what I mean? Like I'm like, no, this is the best version of Bane. This is the best
I
version
love it.
of King Shark. You know what I mean? Like these are all the best versions of the characters now,
Yeah.
and I'm ruined when I try to watch other stuff because I'm like, nope, that's not how she would handle it. You know what I
No,
mean?
that's not Bane. I need a 6-episode spinoff of Bane running an office
I
somewhere.
love it. It's so good. And the fact that little stuff, right? Like them having his city be a luchador-based city
Yeah.
with all the bright lights, and it's all
Bainton. No one could pronounce it right. Benetton, Bainton. What?
Bainton. No, you're saying it wrong. Like, oh, I loved it. And like you said, by the end, because of the evolutions, I'm literally turning to my friend, and we're both looking at each other with shock and delight as things were happening. That's a very special thing to get in a show.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, and seeing that Poison Ivy was voiced by Lake Bell, who's amazing. I was already sold, so I'm enjoying and hoping that show
And
continues.
it made me like a character I hated.
Oh,
With
who?
Kite Man, first few
Oh,
episodes, I'm like, I hate this loser. He doesn't deserve Ivy. And by the end, I'm like, you go, you basic bitch. You deserve everything.
just it's having, and the interesting and maybe this is something you picked up on, but not other people did, having a male character who's not this aggressive antagonist, who's just this guy who wants to like make her happy, and he's a little clueless, but he's not like an idiot. He's just a guy who likes her, and maybe buys his own hype, Kite Man thing. And the episode with his parents was genius.
I'm really into astrology, and he's such a Cancer. Like it's almost like they took Cancer and they built a character around it. That's how much he's a Cancer, and I absolutely love it because, like I said, at one episode they really do say you're a basic bitch, and that's when, like, if you hadn't noticed it by now, you can go back and look, like, yes, he is an everyman, but like in the real sense of what men really are like. The vast majority of men aren't walking around being like, oh, I'm a caveman and I just drink
Oh,
beer. That's what we've been shown on TV. The
wow.
vast majority of men are like, I want to get married and have kids and a wife. And, like, that's more normal than what we're used to seeing.
He's got like the insecurities, like him being so like focused on getting like that wedding venue, and then getting heated when like the other couple came in. I'm like, dude.
I loved it.
All right. Oh, geez.
That's what my boyfriend right now, if we ever get to that point, that's how he's gonna be. He's gonna get in a fight with Mustard Man or whatever his name was.
Condiment King.
Condiment King.
Like, we're booking this venue.
And I'll be like, I don't care. We can get married in a shack, dude.
He's like, no, I have this on my vision board. We're getting married here. It's happening.
Our song's gonna be Beauty and the Beast, Tale as Old as Time. Like, okay, whatever you want, sugar.
He'll get the full jacket with like the frillies, the frocks.
Don't say that out loud, because if he hears this, that'll put ideas in his head.
Oh, Ricky, if you're listening.
No.
Hey, also, and pass along to him. I enjoyed him on Lucha Underground. I thought his whole thing was entertaining and wacky in the way that Lucha Underground managed to do wacky. I thought it was really cool stuff that he was.
And a lot of that came from his ideas. I think that's the coolest part. Yeah, he would pitch them ideas, and they'd be like, "Oh, you know what? Yeah, let's do it." And really, by the 4th season is where he came into the fullness of the kind of ideas that he had for the character. And so going back and watching it now, knowing that and knowing him better. It's on Tubi TV, by the way, if you guys want to watch Lucha Underground.
All 4 seasons. I'm in the midst of season 2 right now.
Right there for you to watch. I feel like Lucha Underground and WoW are so similar.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of people don't get it because WoW isn't gory or bloody, so they don't know that. But if you were a Lucha Underground fan, please give WoW a try, because it's very similar in the cinematic sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the gore, but it has pretty much like everything else. So
same DNA. It's like Lucha Underground's one thing, and WoW is its energetic, stickers on the face younger sister.
Yes.
And you're gonna enjoy both.
Yeah.
And speaking of wrestling, has there been anything you've seen that you've liked in terms of women's wrestling that hasn't irritated you? Because you said there are things that irritate you with what happens at WWE in the bigger places. For me, it's Impact's women's division has been sorting itself out.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned this on my, on my Women's Wrestling Friends podcast too. Impact is pretty much the only place besides WoW that is telling stories with their women. I
Yeah.
mean, we all got real hype about AEW, and maybe for the men it's paying off, but for me, as someone who wants to watch women competitors, none of them have real stories at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they're finally going to do this tag tournament thing, so okay, maybe this will do it. But
Yeah.
I've still even seen people saying like, why would I care about anyone? I don't know them. You haven't done anything to
Yeah.
show me who they are, like as competitors. But besides just we want to win because winning is the thing to do. But my girl Abaddon's on there. My girl Anna Jay, they're both on there, and they have a lot of character. So I'm hopeful.
And yeah, NJ's awesome. I like her.
And then with the WWE, I think right now they're kind of hindered with the whole trying to do it without an audience thing. So I'm cutting them some slack for once. But I don't watch it in protest of what they did with Saudi Arabia. But
I'm with. Same here. I watch maybe one episode of NXT a month, if that.
Yeah.
I don't watch any of the other stuff because when that whole thing happened, I was like, really? And you say wrestlers drink the Kool-Aid when it comes to like fans drink the Kool-Aid because they just want their entertainment.
They don't want to hear about it. Yeah. No, I said that. I was like, hey, we all just agreed that with WWE letting go all these people was shitty, and yet here it is one day later, and you're all tweeting about Raw. What's wrong with you people? And everyone's just kind of like, and I'm like, all right, cool. But so in that world, you have Impact, which is having people go into mystical dimensions, losing memories and getting new memories, having a real world kind of show coming up now. Like I have to say, Impact is definitely doing the most. But if with WoW not in the picture right now, Impact is doing great with their women.
Shout out to Deonna Purrazzo, who I've been a fan of since Jump. Not getting any respect in NXT, being there for a year and having 3 matches on TV, disgraceful. Going to Impact, wrestling Jordan Grace, who's great, and being the Impact Women's Champion. Sarah, I'm gonna let you go. It's been fun. This interview went totally off outline, but that's fine. I had a great time talking to you. Folks, like she said, WoW will have a home. It will be back. Follow them on social media. Sarah, promote your social media stuff.
Yes, first of all, please join my Patreon because that's how I'm paying for things without being able to wrestle. Patreon.com/Sarah the Rebel. You get lots of cool features from that. Check out Twitter, Sarah the Rebel. Instagram is Sarah the Rebel. Once I get back on Twitch again, bless my heart, that'll be Sarah the Rebel too. I'm Sarah the Rebel everywhere because I have good branding. Sarah's an H as God in the Bible intended. And join me. We're having a good time. The Rebel crew is taking over.
Nice. Awesome. And like we said, folks, Black Lives Matter, Black Trans Lives Matter, wear a mask, drink water, try and be nice to each other, play more Sims, watch Avatar.
Yeah. Quit talking smack about The Sims. Go play it. Not for it. Garbage.
I love that Sims 4 has birthed this new life. Like, I'm not a huge Sims fan, but I appreciate that it's resurgence during the pandemic.
Even though Sims 4 is absolute garbage.